So the first question goes that what actually got you into metal music at first, and how did you become a vocalist?
I must have been about 11 or 12. I was just really into dark pop music and orchestral stuff, and someone I knew at school, not really a friend, I sort of crossed paths with, and he just lent me a few albums. I think they were like Ozzy and Merciful Fate, Slayer. Did me a mixture tape as well with all kinds of stuff on it, punk stuff, heavy metal, thrash, and just got into it very, very quickly after that. As for singing, I was like in so many bands when I was at school, probably about 6 or 7.
Okay. So was Uriel your first ever like proper band?
Well, there was a band called the Lemon Grove Kids that actually did okay. Didn't actually do any physical product other than demos. But no, Cradle was really, first proper band as such. And haven't had a proper job since.
So obviously you have a very wide vocal range. So when you started doing vocals, were you first like mimicking other vocalists and then sort of figuring out your own way to do things? Or what kind of like early memories you have when it comes to like screaming and growling?
Well, I was in punk bands. Ipswich, the area in which I live in England, was very famous for being under the sort of wing of a local radio presenter who was very famous, actually, called John Peel. He's actually dead now, but he was very eclectic. Everybody knew him across the world. He championed bands like Napalm Death and the Stupids and Extreme Noise Terror, and did all these sessions in London and Maida Vale. And subsequently, because he lived locally, there were a lot of shows around here. So we had Carcass, Napalm, Bolt Thrower, all these UK hardcore bands that most then transitioned into being sort of death metal, and what have you. So that was a big influence, and my earlier bands were sort of punk hardcore influence because of that. So I guess that's where the vocals started coming into it. And I guess I can't really remember, but I guess that's how everything starts. So you start mimicking other people, and then just find your own way from there.
So do you remember how long did it take to find the right technique for those high-pitched screams, for example? Or were you losing your voice like all the time in the early days? Well, I've been trained since then, so it's not a painful thing in the slightest. But it was a bit hit and miss. And I don't know what I was aiming for anyway. It's I guess with anything, it's about personal development, and you've got to find the right path. You didn't even know if you're on the right path for a start. So I should imagine it probably was about 3-4 years. As soon as you start playing shows and recording in studios and sort of being professional, because when people say you've been in a band for X amount of time, I only really take it from the release of the first album, because any other time it's a hobby before then. Until till an album comes out, you're not really a consummate professional. And also it makes me feel a little younger. So what?
So no, but I would say it probably took about a good 3 or 4 years, but going out live, like I say, in studio work and stuff like that, you learn to become professional rather quickly and adapt, like musicians have to for so many things, like interviews, being in videos, turning up at awards ceremony, all this other stuff that's on the periphery of actually doing the main thing, which is music.
So what kind of like memories do you have when it comes to the first proper European tours? Were you ready as a vocalist back then to do a long tour, and did you have the stamina for the vocals to do long tour?
No, not at all. Our first tours were like sort of very well, they weren't even tours, they were like 1 or 2 days in Europe. So maybe 1 or 2 shows. The first one I think was about 10 shows, maybe 12. Supported by Vader and Malevolent Creation, and I remember it being a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, and wondering how. But then it was like 10 days in a row. You know, nowadays I would never attempt 10 days. Yeah, it's like at the very, very push. If like we have to do a show because otherwise it's like a 2,000-mile trip. You know, I'll stretch to 5, but 4 is usually my limit. Just because if you're on a big tour, you might be feeling fine after 4 gigs, but you've only got 1 day to calm down and then add it again. So you start piling that on, it starts, wearing down. So ideally 3, 4 at a stretch, 5 if it's like a real necessity.
Okay, but not more than that.
Not in a row, no. Just need a day to chill out, and calm down.
Yeah, and I guess vocal cords needs also some rest.
Yeah.
So obviously, like when you started, you were young and you were probably partying a lot and were acting like way different than nowadays. So how different is actually your like warm-up routines, like compared from the early days to now on?
Well, the early day. I was actually thinking about an incident the other day because I was looking for an album that I remember. I never found it. It's lost to the thousands of albums I've got. I couldn't find it at all. But I remember the night we were listening to it, and it was in a flat. I think the promoter's apartment after a show in Belgium, and I think we were playing with like Ancient Rite and a bunch of other black metal bands, and we pretty much stayed up most of the night smoking cigarettes and drinking. And I wouldn't dream of even doing, I don't smoke, but I wouldn't even dream of doing that now. And then thinking, I wonder why I'm a bit husky and tired today. There's things, I don't drink anymore either. So the tour passes so much easier, and not having a hangover. Hangovers are worse. I've done a gig where the worst hangover ever. And I literally just had to say to myself, before I went on stage, I was still in bed, like wanting to be sick, spinning, just feeling awful, drained of energy. And I just had to literally say, this is just an hour and a half, just fucking switch off, and do it. And it was actually really, really good, but I didn't enjoy it. It was a painful experience. And I vowed that would never happen again. And of course, that was probably about 10 years ago, and it happened probably about 50 times after that occasion, but no more.
So do you have...
there are lots of other things to take into consideration as well. So maybe that's just when it becomes more of a career and you've got more to lose and there's more people counting on you, and you know what I mean, you've got more responsibility, I guess. That's why you look at it. But I don't feel like you've lost anything, Back then, I would have thought, if I said, right, well, you've got to look after your voice, so this is out of the question. You can't do this, you need to do that. I would be like, well, that sounds like it sounds like torture. But it's a necessity, and it doesn't feel like it's a stress. It doesn't feel like I'm putting myself out there to do it. It just feels like natural and cool and calm. And I think the most important thing about anything is a mental state of things. You've got to be enjoying what you're doing.
So obviously you will be releasing a live album, Trouble and Double Lives, on 28th of April via Napalm Records. So speaking about like having live show and performance and something that you're going to record, do you have like different warm-up routines, or is it just like a regular show that you warm up the same? And what kind of routine do you have?
Mine's very brief, actually. I just go through all my sounds and start small, get bigger. When you're on a routine, like on the tour anyway, you don't need... I see people warm up for like an hour, and I'm like, oh my God, that's like running a marathon before running a marathon. What the hell? So maybe like 5-10 minutes. Obviously, the main thing is you've already had... If it's not a festival, I warm up for longer. But if it's on tour, we would have already had a sound check and played like for half an hour. So literally very little warm up for the actual show. And bear in mind, it would only probably be about 10 hours between coming off stage and doing the sound check anyway. So the most important thing really is getting rehearsals paced out. If I'm in work, I've got some studio work next week, so I've got an intro. Even though I've only been off tour for a week, I still need that introductory lesson on Monday, and then I'll go back and do a stronger lesson on the Thursday, and then I'll be ready for the studio on the Friday. If I was just coming in cold, like had 4 weeks off for Christmas, I'd probably do 4 or 5 rehearsals before attempting anything. Yeah, at least 5, 6 rehearsals before going on tour for sure.
So do you have like some kind of like drinks or something that you take before the show, like a honey tea or anything like that?
It depends how I feel. I don't drink water and I don't drink alcohol on stage. I have a Red Bull for just a bit of energy, and I drink red-based fruit drinks. Nothing too acidic, nothing like orange juice or anything. Ribena's good. Water, funny enough, dries your throat out. Beer obviously does the same. Yeah, and maybe a coffee, a black coffee, or like a herbal tea before I go on as well. It's always good. Yeah.
But that varies. It isn't like the same before each show.
It probably is. It probably is tantamount to the same each show. It depends. It's always just depending on what, you know. I always bring my own supplies, but there's always that awkward moment where you're in, you know, middle of fucking America, and you run out, or the drinks exploded, or something strange has happened, and you've got to improvise.
Are there like some food, for example, that you try to stay away before the show, that you have felt that they affect your vocal cords, for example, somehow?
Yeah, you know what? There's something else also that it's like anything. If you start worrying about anything and becoming too anal about it, it really, you start picking up on everything. And I found that when I stopped worrying about being so very particular about things. Oh, I can't do this. I can't, you know, I can't be in the shadow of the clock at 3:30 in the afternoon because it's going to affect my, you know, silly things. I can't eat peanuts, for example, or have dairy, you know, before midnight or whatever. Once I stopped worrying about that, I found it pretty okay. So I'm not too bad with food. Obviously, I haven't sat really spicy or sat really overly filling before going on. I had a bad experience of that. The last show of our last American tour, not this one, we all went for a big fancy steak dinner, and the place we wanted to go to was shut, so we went to a different one. They took ages to serve. It was super expensive, so we had to stay and eat it. And I went on stage. As soon as I got on stage, I just was sick everywhere, and it was really bad. I must have given myself either food poisoning or just was, you know, just put too much in my stomach. So that's another thing. I'd rather go on hungry than stuffed.
Obviously, you have a long history with the band and you've released a lot of albums, but when you are becoming like older and older, does that affect somehow your vocal cords and your singing? Have you noticed that it's, for example, now more difficult to hit the high notes than before, or?
Well, yes, yeah, but there's different techniques. Of course it will be. It's just, I used to worry about that, and I was like, fuck that, why am I worrying about it? It's like, there's nothing you can do about it. You listen to James Hetfield, he used to squeal, and now, like, you know, his voice is like an octave lower, literally. It's just the way things are. It's the same for everybody. It's impossible not to do it. There is a couple of people who can strip the vocal cords back. So basically, you go back to an earlier incarnation of yourself, but it's a lengthy procedure, like, you know, the healing period and what have you. So I don't know. I'm comfortable with what I'm more comfortable now. Believe it or not, I know you hear that from a lot of people because they're always like trying to avoid the fact that they're probably not as good as they were. But I am way more comfortable singing now. I don't get heebie-jeebies. I don't get stage fright or anything like that. A little nervous sometimes if family and friends are there, but
I'm just kind of comfortable because I've kind of found my place.
Do you feel that you can actually hear it from the upcoming live album compared to the live albums that you've released before?
Well, we only released one live album before. There was a bootleg one, but I don't know. I haven't compared. I got no idea. I'm just going on the fact that we're quite a prolific touring band, and yeah, I think we've done it so much, and we were very fortunate to actually get out on tour pretty much at the end of the pandemic as well. That we're kind of just used to it. It's become like a second nature.
Are there like some specific albums that you could pinpoint from the discography where you have felt that you have taken like a massive step forward as a vocalist, that you have learned something about yourself?
I would say Cruelty and the Beast, yeah. I was doing a lot of warm-up for that, and then when it came to the actual singing, I couldn't do fuck. I was literally hit a brick wall. And my singing tutor at the time had recommended, like, always said that opera singers had taken a small well, she didn't mention what size it was. You can imagine where I'm going with this. That they drank, what's it called? Rum. Like, oh, no, not rum. Opera singers, they always have a glass of sherry, before they go on. And so I bought a really nice bottle of sherry and drank the whole fucking lot. And somehow, despite having a terrible fucking hangover in the morning, like the worst. Oh, port, sorry, not sherry, port. Very similar. So somehow during the course of drinking this entire bottle of port, but I just broke into the voice that then became my voice onward. And then there was a time when about the pornography, well, it was a pornography album. I was having a very bad problem. My voice couldn't hit anything, couldn't get the highs, nothing. And I had Melissa Cross fly over. That didn't really work, although she did teach me some kind of useful things. Eventually, I went to doctor after doctor in a very small space of time. And when there was nothing proven wrong with me, one doctor at London Throat Clinic gave me the phone number of a guy who does throat manipulation, like stretches on the vocal cords and massage and teaches you how to readdress and speak again. And it lowered my voice, but it put it in a different place that was way more controllable. And essentially what I'd been singing on the muscles so long in the wrong places that they'd just tightened up like tennis elbow. So I saw him for a good 6, 7, maybe 8 years. And he taught me a lot of good things that, you know, a bit you go, oh my God, I can't imagine a vocalist doing that. And other things that just go, well, that's so obvious. Why don't people do that? So, yeah, I've been very fortuitous on 2 occasions that I definitely noticed a change.
So what were your parents' reactions when you first started screaming and growling? What were their thoughts about your extreme metal band?
They've always been very supportive of it. I think my mother was more bothered that I ruined her brand new, because we used to, when they were at work, we used to my punk band used to move all the furniture in the front room, set up the drum kit in the corner, which was all fine. You know, it was perfectly legitimate. We had double glazing, so it didn't annoy the neighbours. But my drummer bought a new kick drum pedal and greased it, and of course, it just made a big fucking mark on my mum's brand new carpet, like perfect underneath of a bass drum pedal, foot pedal. And yeah, she was not best pleased, and we were banned from rehearsing then. So I think that was more of a bother than the actual music.
So obviously
I think you start getting, you know, well known and bringing records out, and that it becomes an acceptable evil.
So obviously you have a very long career as an extreme metal vocalist. Are there like any advice that you would like to give to a young metal vocalist who is just about to start the journey?
Get a proper job, for God's sake, before it's too late.
Are there like some things that you have done like wrong that you felt that would be nice to say?
Well, yeah. I'd say alcohol is always a problem. I come from a different. I think if you look at the 70s, that was very much hardcore, and it got probably worse in the 80s. And we joined it in the 90s, and probably wasn't as prolific, the sort of drinking and drug use, but it was still a big thing. And as every band I knew, every band. And so I would probably put a range. If looking back, we had an amazing time and also a very dangerous and ridiculous time. And I cannot believe that we haven't been put in prison yet. And sometimes, the things we got up to still haunt us even to this day, as in, like, we'll turn up at a venue and people will be like, oh my God, it's Cradle of Filth. God, even though it's a completely different band. But yeah, I would just say, enjoy yourself, really enjoy yourself, but just watch out. Don't go overboard on some things. Just use your brain. You know what I mean?
I guess in this cancel culture, you would have been cancelled if you start now your career.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Hey, Dani, it was once again a pleasure to talk to you, and all the best for the release of the live album. Anything you want to say as a closer to all the Finnish fans?
Well, thank you ever so much for your continued support. I hope everybody enjoys the live album. I believe it comes out on the 28th of this month. 2 new tracks. There's another video coming out shortly afterwards. We then fly to Sick New World, which is in a big festival in Las Vegas. And on our return, I mention that because as soon as we get back from that, we enter the studio to start working on recording our new album, which comes out this time next year. But later in the year, hopefully we're looking at sort of July, August, our collaborative single with Ed Sheeran is going to be released. Charity.
Is that the song that you're going to record the vocals for on Friday?
Yes. He's already done his parts. He's played his acoustic guitar and sang all his parts. And everything's been done apart from my parts now. So
is it going to be like a Cradle song or more of a Sheeran song or something in the middle?
Exactly how you can imagine a Cradle of Filth meets Ed Sheeran. It's got acoustic guitar, it's got his vocals, it's got my vocals, it's got screams, it's got blast beat in it. So it's the worst of both, best and worst of both worlds.
I'm actually looking forward a lot to it. But when I first heard the news, I was like, fuck yeah, this is something that I want to hear. So looking very much forward to it.
Cool.
Hey, thank you, Dani, for the chat. And
hope
to see you in Finland again sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
Cheerio.